Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bill Rappard, and on behalf of my colleagues from Paydirt and Gold Mining Journal, a very warm welcome to Paydirt's Battery Minerals Conference. In introducing Keith Pitt, Keith Pitt is from Queensland.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the warm welcome. Firstly, it's great to be back in Western Australia, and can I just say, finally, back in Western Australia. Secondly, can I acknowledge all the dignitaries in the room? Your Excellencies, I know Bill Johnson's had to just sneak off for another urgent matter. Bill would have been in the room as well, and he's continued the great tradition at federal and state level, along with myself and others, that we always put the sector and the national interest first and politics second. And I think that's been a great reflection on the work that's happened here in WA and right across the nation. Now, I know there's a couple of my staff here as well, and unfortunately for them, I'm going to do what I usually do, which is I have an incredibly well-crafted speech here from my department. It outlines all very important things, which I'm going to put to the side and speak very openly about what matters. And quite simply, what matters is that you deliver for our country. You, as in your businesses, as in your ventures, as in the risks that you take, because quite simply, we need you to. It's that straightforward. Now, it's been a big week here in the West, and just to give you an idea of how important the work is that you are doing, the resources sector alone, Monday's numbers from the Resources Energy Quarterly, right across the country, is expected to break $425 billion of economic activity for this nation. $425 billion. Now, people get a bit immune to numbers. They get a bit immune to millions and billions and trillions. To give you an idea, in the midst of the outbreak, that number was $246 billion. You are part of a sector which is carrying the Australian economy. It is you that is allowing us to deliver the essential services that everyone relies on. It is royalties, it is taxes, it is investment, it is all those hard-working men and women in the resources sector who allow us to deliver the things that were in the budget last week. And can I just encourage you, keep going. You must keep going. Just this week, we've announced a loan for Iluka, $1.25 billion on Monday. That will deliver a refinery here in Western Australia, which will be the biggest in the Western world for rare earths. The biggest in the Western world for rare earths. And I just want to acknowledge that that takes an acceptance of risk. Everybody in the room, you all understand what the challenges are when there is a monopoly supplier, a monopoly market, and a monopoly producer. But the decision has been made by us federally, along with the Prime Minister and others, that this is an area, this is a space that Australia needs to be in. It is an area in which Australia has expertise. It is an area where our reputation right around the world precedes us. Throughout the pandemic, it has been our country that has kept the lights on in Japan and South Korea and others. It has been your organisations and organisations right across the resources sector that has met contracts, that has delivered, that has made sure those things for which we made commitments, we delivered on. And do not underestimate how important that reputation is. On top of that, yesterday I was at Santos, where they've announced, in combination with me, production licence for Dorado. Now, why am I talking about Dorado at a critical minerals conference talking about future battery needs? Well, it's pretty straightforward. This is the biggest oil find off the Northwest Shelf for more than 3 decades. And no matter where we shift to in the future, right now, we still need that supply. We do. You only have to look at the uncertainty in Europe, the uncertainty from the Ukraine incident and events, the fact that we have, and I'll be brutally frank, a madman in Putin who has invaded the next door neighbour, who has killed many people, to know that we must continue to keep the balance right. And that is what we intend to do. And then later today, I'll be at Woodside, where Woodside will announce that they have received their key approvals for the Scarborough joint venture. This is $15 billion Australian. As I've said, in a time of uncertainty, we have Australian companies making big decisions to invest in this nation, and that is single-handedly a vote of confidence in what you all do every single day. But ladies and gentlemen, we are here to talk about critical minerals and what we can do around batteries. I don't need to explain to the room what's happening around the world. I don't need to explain to you the technology and demand. I don't need to tell you exactly how these things will work, the global increase in demands for smartphones or laptops or anything else. But we know that it's significant, and we know that Australia needs to be a part of it. Now, we will never be able to deliver every single element that every country demands, whether it is upstream, downstream or finalised product. But I can tell you now, we are determined to make sure that Australia delivers as much as humanly possible, as much as we can manage, as much as we can invest, as much as we can deliver. Because right now and into the future, our nation needs that economic certainty and stability. This is an uncertain time right around the world. People are turning to Australia because they know that in this country they are firstly safe, secondly their investment is safe, thirdly they can work in an area of political stability, and fourthly and most importantly, the technical skills, the needs, they are met here. We have an incredible met sector. We are building the critical minerals sector, and this will be something which will add into the economy. And the advice I have is up to 50,000 direct jobs by 2050. 50,000 direct jobs. Now, once again, this sounds like a bit of a number. So what, 50,000? Well, can I tell you, that's pretty much the whole coal sector. And they've just broken all records. They'll do $110 billion for this nation this financial year. The royalties from the resources sector is what pays for state governments. Fundamentally in Western Australia, quite a big chunk, I've got to say. If Bill was here, I'd ask him to point out that it's roughly 30% of what happens in the West. And you're in a very strong financial position. But we have to maximise that financial position. We have to maximise those opportunities. We have to maximise the benefit for the Australian people. And that is something I've been absolutely determined to do since I came into this role a couple of years ago. And I do want to give a quick shout out to some of the big resource companies who I know, on occasions, they don't get accolades and bouquets. But I said to them at the outset, I think it's incredibly important that you train more Australian kids. You need to do more around apprentices and trainees. You need to engage more of them. And to be frank, they absolutely have. Almost 6,000 last year. That is more than they've done for 3 years in total. We've got 220,000 trade apprentices in training right now. That is the highest we've had since records began. But back to the critical minerals sector, and what is it that we're looking to do in terms of policy positions to ensure that we do deliver. We do deliver in this nation. So we've released the 2022 Critical Minerals Strategy. We've put $2 billion on the table for the Critical Minerals Loan Facility, of which 1.25 out on the weekend, 200 plus for spherical graphite a couple of weeks earlier. We have a $200 million Minerals Accelerator Initiative, Critical Minerals Accelerator Initiative. I said to my staff, surely we can call this something else. Give me something with an acronym that's a bit simpler to say. When you get a bit tired, you have to say $200 million for the Critical Minerals Accelerator Initiative 10 times. It gets a bit difficult. But today I'm announcing that the guidelines for applications for that initiative will be released by my department today. So you'll be able to go and look at the Critical Minerals Accelerator Initiative, how you can apply, what the demand is, what the need is, and these are upfront, straight up grants. Now, there are those out there who criticise the Commonwealth Government, the Coalition, for what we do in this space, but this is pretty straightforward. You all know the difficulties of firstly looking for capital, but secondly, to be able to demonstrate that you have a confirmed prototype, that you have the IP that's necessary to deliver downstream. And please don't underestimate how important this is. We are determined to get as far down the processing stream as we possibly can in this country, because our sovereign manufacturing capability is incredibly critical to this country. It is critical to this country, and it doesn't matter whether it is in refineries, whether it is in critical minerals, whether it is other manufacturing. For those of you, and I'm sure that's pretty much everyone in the room, who's worked their way through the pandemic, who's done some pretty hard yards, can I tell you, my hair was nowhere near as grey as it is now 2 years ago. And the things that kept me awake as a member of the federal cabinet and someone who comes from a technical background, I'm an electrician by trade, I'm an electrical engineer by profession. What is the 10-cent washer that we don't produce that shuts the country? What is the 5-cent item that we can't get anymore, or that has been driven up in price so drastically we can no longer afford it? Well, can I tell you, there were a lot of 10-cent washers. There were a lot of 10-cent washers, and we had to address each and every one of them as they popped up, as each of you did in your businesses, because it has been a very difficult time. In the budget last week, there was also an additional $200 million for a regional stream of critical minerals. So this will add in to the initiative that we've already announced. So it is a $400 million package in total. $50 million for the virtual National Critical Minerals Research and Development Centre. That will be done virtually, working with ANSTO, the CSIRO, and one of my departments, Geoscience Australia. And of course, we have the $1.3 billion Modern Manufacturing Initiative. Now, we have outlined our priorities for Australia. We have put your hard-earned on the table to make sure you are successful. And we have a vision to put Australia at the centre of meeting that growing demand. We need to make our nation and our national economy bigger, not smaller. And we need to make sure that we have more people paying taxes, not less. We have bills which have to be paid. So regardless of whether it's the $270 billion we are putting forward for defence assets, whether it's the money that we are putting into the resources sector to make it grow, or whether it is simply the support we provide to people who are in their time of need. And right now, I do want to acknowledge a lot of my colleagues on the East Coast are in a very, very difficult position. Whether that is Kevin Hogan in Lismore, which I'm told is effectively ground zero. It looks a lot like a war zone. Those things still have to be paid for. And this is how we deliver them. This is how we deliver them. So that sovereign capability, we'll continue to work on all of that. We expect that there'll be significant job increases. We do want to see further jobs and growth in the regions. And in terms of the Modern Manufacturing Initiative, we've already had some announcements recently which have made a real difference. And these are direct grants. These are about ensuring that we are building sovereign manufacturing capability and that we do everything we can to ensure that you're successful. So I just want to talk about a couple of them. Firstly, Pure Battery Technologies received a grant of $119.6 million. I'm not sure how many people have speechwriters in the room, but tell your speechwriters not to put 119.6. It's 120 will do. It's not that hard. To develop nickel and cobalt battery material refinery in WA at Kalgoorlie. Now, my good friend and colleague Rick Wilson is the member for O'Connor down there. He has been a passionate advocate for the resources sector. I've been on the end of a couple of, I won't say sprays, Rick's very passionate, we'll say that, about getting things right. And of course, at Kalgoorlie, they have the super pit, right? It's not a moment of self-reflection, it's just a description of what's there. That didn't go down too. So my name's Keith Pitt, right? This is, gee, you're a tough crowd this time of day. You really are a tough crowd. But that project alone, 550 direct jobs, 1,700 indirect into the region. 49 million for Australian vanadium, 45 million for Alpha HPA, high purity alumina, 30 million for Arafura Resources for the Nolans Rare Earth Separation Plant and the NT. Right across our country, there are opportunities for growth, there are opportunities for more jobs, there are opportunities for further investment. And ladies and gentlemen, can I just say to you, I don't care what the world's buying, but if they're buying, we're selling. I can't be more brutally frank than that. If they are buying, we are selling. Because we need to make sure our economy continues to grow. We need to strengthen this nation as quickly as possible. We need to be stronger than we currently are given world events, and that is exactly what we intend to do. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to take a number of questions, to be honest. I'd much rather take questions than simply talk. But I want to come back to where I started, and that is about you, each one of you, your businesses and the investment decisions that you are likely to make into the future. We stand with you as a government. This is a sector we want to see growth. This is an opportunity of which we want to maximise for the benefit of all Australians. And I think this can go on to be a significant part of the Australian economy. But it can't do it without your commitment. We're doing everything we can from a policy viewpoint to make sure you are successful. I've signed MOUs with Japan, with South Korea, with India. We've got things in place with the United States. We're working further with like-minded democracies. Because quite simply, if we are going to build another supply chain, well, there is risk involved, and the Australian government will stand with you every single step of the way because we want to see you be successful. So can I congratulate you on the work you've done already? Can I congratulate all of the people that work for you through the last 2 years, which has been a very difficult period, but never underestimate where we have finished. There is no better place to be than this country. There is nowhere who has a stronger position than Australia in terms of the management of the pandemic, in terms of our economy. I mean, we have a 4% unemployment rate. Who would have thought you would see that after 2 years of a worldwide pandemic? We have a resources sector that's damn near doubled their output in the same period. So we should celebrate our successes. We should make sure that we recognise it is a result of the hard work of every Australian that has come through the pandemic and out the other side. We've got more to do. We intend to do it. We want to build a stronger economy for a stronger future for all Australians. And I'm happy to take questions, and thank you so much. Good morning. God bless.
Thank you, Minister. Is there a question from the floor? We've got one just up the front. If you could say your name. Thank you.
Jacques Eckstein from the Future Battery Industry, CRC, Research Director. Thank you, Mr. Pitt. One thing, and thank you also for all the approvals. It's been fantastic to see all the activity across the critical minerals. We've got the mineral endowment, we've got the trade in place in terms of trade agreements, a huge amount of momentum. One of the things that I see missing at the moment nationally is around training and education in terms of engineers getting into the field, and that's probably one of our key shortages. How does the government currently see that position? Because if we don't have the people to support all these critical mineral industries, that's going to be a big, missing link, if I can put it that way. What is the current government's view in terms of supporting that side of the engineering, the sciences, and the TAFEs to actually get the right people in the field to support these industries?
Look, it's a very good question, and you're exactly on the money. And Future CRC was mentioned in my formal speech, which I didn't read, so the department hasn't forgotten you. I'm a very frank speaker, and I'll say it very frankly. We need to do better in the high school education system. We need to stop saying to kids that physics and maths is too hard and you should just do the easy option. I've only got one child left coming through there. The other two have moved through university and elsewhere. But the concept that you shouldn't do something because it's difficult, well, I just find that abhorrent. We should be out encouraging kids to test themselves every single day. We should be teaching them how to think, not what to think. Now, we've made adjustments in terms of the fees for areas in university education, for example, which will be areas of need into the future, whether that is in engineering or others. That happened a couple of years ago. I know we are trying to make adjustments to the curriculum, but that has been remarkably difficult. But fundamentally, this is the area of need. This is where we need to have people come through with those skills. I was having a conversation earlier, not last year, but the year before. We had just 46 mining engineers enroll. Now, on usual numbers, only half of those will graduate. I mean, BHP would take 50 in a year. So we've got to do better at turning them out, and we've got to stop scaring kids about the resources sector. The resources sector is what keeps the lights on. It's how you get to drive a car. It's how you build things. It's how you make steel. But we seem to have this fundamental disconnect between the realities of life and the ideology of some. And I think we need to get back to a balanced viewpoint. Everyone is entitled to their view, but not to the detriment of our country.
Another question? Down the back.
Thanks, Minister. Warren Pearce, CEO for AMEC. Really interested in the two announcements that have come out around the Indian-Australia Free Trade Agreement and the United States export agencies willing to fund Australian critical minerals projects. Just interested if you can share some of the conversations government might be having and whether you think we can really build those into strong supply chain partnerships for Australia.
All right, I'll be really clear. I won't be having conversations about internal conversations that I can't talk about, but the things I can talk about, and this is public. I mean, we have an arrangement already with one organisation with the US Department of Defence, and I think that will continue to grow. India, as you all know, is a frontier area in terms of trade. Right? It's the biggest democracy in the world. For those of you who have dealt with Indian trade delegations, I'm not sure I've ever had tougher negotiations than dealing with India's representatives. They are really hardcore. However, they recognise, the same as every other country, that Australia is reliable. Right? If you want to guarantee your supply, then you invest in this nation. And I'll give you a really easy example. So when China decided they weren't taking Australian coal anymore, a very large proportion of that went to India. And because we had arrangements in place, because we'd signed free trade agreements with other countries, because we had options for our companies in terms of those exporters to go to other places. That's why we continue to negotiate these types of trade arrangements and agreements. And there is some good outcomes for the critical minerals space in this current agreement with India. Would I like it to be more forward-leaning? Of course I would. But it's the deal that's on the table, and it's the one we've signed, and it's the one that will be delivered when the Parliament returns and ratifies that trade agreement, as we do with every other in terms of the process. But don't underestimate how important those agreements are. And I'll come back to some of the things I said earlier. Right? In an uncertain world, It is our like-mindeds, it's our friends and allies, it's the people for which we have struck arrangements and agreements that will hold us in good stead into the future, regardless of what else happens. And I think that's been very clearly demonstrated. And I just want to make one comment completely unrelated, if that's okay. Some of you who may or may not have seen, the Australian government is buying 70,000 tonne of thermal coal to deliver to the Ukraine. And now there's been some criticism, particularly of me, about how that might work. But I'll give you the skinny, it's pretty fundamental. Every single hour that we're not delivering that coal into the Ukraine, there is the potential they can't power their hospitals and run their heating. Every single day that we can't deliver that. So we took every action as quickly as possible. And I've got to thank the Public Service and Whitehaven, who were willing to do some fairly remarkable things to make sure we got that over the line and delivered. And these are what we are being asked for, right? In terms of aid into the Ukraine, I mean, who would have thought this is a request that you would get from a country who is at war? Please send us thermal coal. Well, that's what they've asked for. That's what we'll deliver. And we'll continue to assist, not only with weapons and other aid, but I think it's a really important point to make. When there was a time of need, where did they turn to? They turned to our country because they know we can deliver.
Round of applause. Thank you, Minister. Great, passionate speech. Thank you very much.